Good morning, Veritas. It is Monday, April 27th, 2020. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope you had a nice weekend. Let's get started with our math for today. So there are 3 problems in your Google Classroom assignment for Monday, April 27th. These are the 3 problems, so pause here if you need to find them. Get yourself some paper ready to go. Okay, and we'll just get started with number 1. It says, which 3 fractions could be used to represent the sum of 4 3/4 and 2 5/8? Okay, so now I'm going to read it again. We need to choose 3. Which 3 fractions? So first I'm going to look, are there 3 choices in A? No. So it's not just having us choose one of them. We need to actually choose 3 different choices, A, B, C, or D. We need to choose 3 of them. So in big letters, I'm going to write choose 3. Because it's easy to get excited when you find the answer to this and you see that the answer is there. It's easy to get excited, choose it, and move to the next one a little too quickly. So I give myself lots of clues to make sure that I choose 3, because we need to choose 3 of these, okay? So which 3 could be used to represent the sum, so this is telling us what operation to do, of 4 3/4 and 2 5/8. So the word sum is telling you what to do. It's telling you that you need to add those 2. Because the sum is the answer to an addition problem. So it's really important that you learn the word sum and know that that has to do with addition and finding the answer to addition. Okay, so we need to choose 3 of these that represent the sum of 4 3/4 and 2 5/8. So watch this. If we add 4 in a fraction plus 2 in a fraction, it's going to be more than 6, right? Because 4 plus 2 is 6. And then we're going to have some fractions, so when you add those together, it's probably going to be 7 something, right? So we can quickly look at these options, and 4 plus 2, even if you ignore the fractions, is going to be 6. So this answer of 2 is not a reasonable answer. No matter what the fractions add to be, when you do 4 plus 2, it's going to be 6. So if you subtracted, you would have gotten 2 1/8. But we're finding the sum. We are adding. So we already know that B is not right. So it looks like we already have all 3 answers, right? A, C, and D are going to be the 3 that are correct, because we already found one that doesn't make any sense, because when you add these, it's going to be 6 or more than 6, right? So there's no way that 2 is a reasonable answer. So we can already cross that off, and we already know A, C, and D are going to be the correct answers. But I'm not going to jump to that. I'm going to check carefully and make sure that I'm not making any little mistakes. So now I'm going to actually add them. 4 3/4 plus 2 5/8. Okay? So we can't add these yet. Make sure you have them right. The right numbers. That happens sometimes. Kids write the wrong numbers because it's complicated to be copying it over here. So the trouble we run into is you can't add 4ths plus 8ths. They're different size pieces, right? So we're going to turn the smaller one into 8. Okay, that way they're both the same denominator. They're both the same number of pieces in the whole, and then we'll be able to add them. So we're going to multiply this times a fraction that's equal to 1 by multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same number. But we got to get to 8 so that we can add. So 4 times what is 8? It's 2. So we're going to multiply 3 times 2 also, which is 6. So we just really multiplied 3/4 times 2 halves. And since 2 halves is equal to 1, we just created an equivalent fraction. We didn't really change the value of 3/4. 3/4 and 6/8 are equivalent. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 2 is 6. So that means 3/4 and 6/8 are equivalent. Now we can add 6/8 plus 5/8. 8ths plus 8ths are going to stay as 8ths. That's just telling us how many pieces are in the whole. And then we're going to add 6 plus 5 is 11. Careful, make sure we're adding. Okay, so we have 11/8 there, so we're going to have to change that. This is an improper fraction. We'll do that in a minute. So 4 plus 2, we'll add the whole numbers, are 6. So we have 6 and 11/8. So 6 plus whatever 11/8 is. So we're going to turn 11/8 into a mixed number. So you do this by doing 11 divided by 8. Okay? If you had 11 pencils and you were breaking them into 8 equal groups, you can only put 1 into each group. because 1 times 8 gets you closest to 11 because you only have 11 of them and you're making 8 groups. So we multiply 1 times 8 is 8, subtract, there's a remainder of 3, and the remainder becomes the numerator, and the divisor, the number we divided by, becomes the denominator. It's 1 3/8. Okay? Another way to think of it using a model is if we made eighths. There's 8 equal pieces in this whole. If we had 11/8, then we'd have 8/8 in this hole. And then we're going to need to draw another hole, same size with eighths, because we need to get to 11. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11/8 is really 1, and then 3/8 of the next one. So see how we end up getting the same answer, whether we do a model and count up 11/8, there's 8/8 plus 3 more is 1 3/8. Or if we can do it with division, this will be a little bit faster, okay? You just have to be able to know how to turn the remainder into the numerator, and the divisor becomes the denominator. So it's 1 3/8. So we're going to do 6 plus 1 3/8, which equals 7 3/8. So that is the answer to this problem. You can't simplify 3/8. That is the answer, 7 3/8. Is that here? Yes, it is C. So I should have done it with the black pen. C is correct. 7 3/8. Now let's look at the other options. 7 6/16. So are those equal? It's still going to be 7. 7 3/8 would be 7 and how many 16ths? So we can do 3/8 equals how many 16ths? Same thing we've been doing. 8 times 2 gets us to 16. And 3 times 2, we have to multiply them by the same number because this is really multiplying 3/8 times 2 halves, and 2 halves equals 1. So we're not really changing 3/8, we're just making it equivalent. 8 times 2 is 16, so 3 times 2 is 6/16. And we end up with 7 6/16. Is that the option? Yes. So A is our second correct choice, and now I'm going to look carefully. It says to choose 3. So obviously 2 is not right. We already went over that because 4 plus 2 is already more than 2. So D, let's check this out. 59/8. That's 59 divided by 8. Okay? If you had 7 3/8, we've learned how to turn this into an improper fraction. So if all 7 of these wholes have eighths in them, right? Each of them has 8 equal pieces. So to find out how many eighths are in 7, we do 8 times 7. So in 7 wholes, there are 56 eighths. Because every whole is 8/8. So if you have 7 of them, if you have 7, and each of them has 8/8 in it, so I drew 7 holes, each one is 8/8, that's 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56 eighths. If we count up all the eighths, we're just adding 8 plus 8, so 8 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can just do 8 times 7 is 56, and each piece is an 8. Okay, so far for these 7, we have 56, but then we have 3 more eighths. So 56 plus 3 makes 59 eighths. And is that the answer? Yes, it is. So D is also correct. So the correct answers for this one, the 3 correct, we made sure we chose 3 correct answers, were A, C, and D. And we kind of knew that anyways. We did know that because we figured out that B is wrong. So if we had to choose 3, then those had to be the right ones. But I still did the work. I still spent 9 minutes making sure that I had it right. So take your time. It's worth it at the end to take your time and make sure you have it right. Because sometimes they're trying to be tricky. So we got to just be extra, extra careful. Okay, give yourself some snaps if you did good on that one. Nice job. That was pretty tricky, especially part D. Knowing how to go from this to this might be easy now, but improper fractions are pretty tricky. So good job if you got that right. Okay, number 2. What's the difference between 6 and 78 hundredths? So again, I'm not going to tell you anymore whether we're adding or subtracting or multiplying or dividing. We need to know what these words mean. The difference between two numbers, the difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. So sum is the answer to addition. Difference is the answer to subtraction. You're finding the difference between two numbers. So you subtract them to find the difference. Okay, right? If I said this building is this tall and the second building is this tall, what's the difference in their height? You're going to take this height away from this height. You're going to subtract to find how much is this part right here. Right? You're going to subtract to find the difference. So you take the bigger number and you subtract the smaller number, and that'll tell you the difference between the two, which would be basically from here to here. Okay, so when we find the difference, we are subtracting. Okay, so the tricky part about this, we're finding the difference of 6. So that's 6 ones, or 6 with the decimal point after it. And we are subtracting 0.78, or 78 hundredths, because the 8 lands in the hundredths place. So the tricky part about that is there are no ones. The decimal points need to be lined up. We have 7 tenths and 8 hundredths. So here you got to put zeros because there are 0 tenths in 6 holes and there are 0 hundredths. So we can just hold these place value spots with zeros. So we're doing 6 minus, to find the difference, 78 hundredths. And that's what this is asking. Difference, 6 and 0.78. Now we're going to subtract, and here's the tricky part. You can't do 0 hundredths minus 8 hundredths. First, I'm going to put the decimal point right here, just so I don't forget that. You can't do 0 minus 8. You can't take 8 away from 0. So you're going to go across this 0. That's going to become a 9, because you're borrowing from here, but there are none to borrow from. So you really got to keep going until you get to a whole number that's not 0 and take one from there. The one we went across becomes 9, and the original we add 10 to. Now think about this. We have started with 6 ones. Now we have 5 ones, 9 tenths, and 10 hundredths. So 10 hundredths makes one of these. So if we add 10 hundredths is 1 more tenth, that would have been 10 tenths, which is the same thing as another whole, which would have made 6. So this still has the value of 6. We just traded. So you can't do 0 minus 8, so you borrow from this. You have to change that to a 9 because you can't really borrow from 0, and then you borrow from the whole number next to it. The original becomes 10. This is also tricky, so be careful that the original one you didn't turn to 9. Okay, so 10 minus 8 is 2, 9 minus 7 is 2, and 5 minus 0 is 5. And the answer to this problem is 5 and 22 hundredths, or 5.22. And that's number 2. Okay, give yourself some snaps. If you did not get that right, check carefully with this subtraction. Did you know that you needed to add? I had a kid last week tell me, oh, the difference is that 6 is in the ones place. Good thinking, but you need to know that when you see the word difference, it means that you're finding the answer to the subtraction problem. Okay, so good try for that person, but let's be a little more careful. All right. Number 3, it says find the product of 26 and 2/3. And we've used this word a little bit more often than the others lately because we've been doing lots of multiplication. So the product is the answer to a multiplication problem. So sum is the answer to an addition problem. Difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. And product is the answer to a multiplication problem. It's very important that you know that. All right. So we're going to find the product, the answer to a multiplication problem of 26 and 2/3. So 26, we're multiplying to find the product, times 2/3. Make sure I got the numbers right. 26 and 2/3. Product means multiply. We're doing 26 times 2/3. Okay? So 26 wholes, right? 26 can be written as a whole number. You can write it as a fraction with a 1 in the denominator because all 26 of those wholes have one big piece. I'm not going to draw 26, but just as a quick example, pretend there are 26 of these. If they're wholes, then each one just has one big piece. And the denominator is telling you how many pieces are in each whole, right? For 2/3, there's going to be 3 pieces in the whole, and 2 of them are colored in. But the denominator is telling you how many pieces are in the whole. So since these 26 all have 1 piece, we can write it like that as a fraction, and then multiply. So multiplying fractions is easier than adding and subtracting them because they don't need the same denominator. You just multiply the numerators. 26 times 2 is 52. If you don't know that, which you probably don't, you should do the multiplication like this. 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, so it's 52. 26 times 2 was 52 for the numerator, and 1 times 3 is 3 for the denominator. So 52 thirds, we cannot leave it like that because that's called an improper fraction. It is greater than 1 because the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So 3 thirds would be 1, so we got to count by 3 until we get to 52. So what we're really doing is 52 divided by 3. Okay, so we're going to do 52 thirds is 52 divided by 3. Okay, so if we had 52 of something and we were putting them into 3 equal groups, there's my 3 groups. We have 52 M&Ms, we're putting them into 3 groups. If you start with just the 50, if you had 50 M&Ms, right, and you tried to put them into 3 groups, you could put 10 into each group. So we're going to put a 1 here because 1 times 3 gets you closest to 5. You're basically thinking 5 divided by 3 is how much? What number times 3 gets you closest to 5? And 2 times 3 would be 6, and we only have 5. So that's a 1, but it's really in the tens place. So that means we can put 10 into each group. 10, 20, 30. We have 52, so we're in good shape right now. So 1 times 3 is 3. 5 tens minus 3 tens are 2 tens. So just like this, we put a 10 into each group. That's what 1 in the tens place stands for. And then there's 2 tens left because there are normally 50 and there's 10, 20, 30. So now we have 40 and 50 that are left. Then you bring down the 2. If we had 22 ones now, how can we split those 22 ones into each group? Or what number times 3 gets you closest to 22? It's 7 because 7 times 3 is 21. 8 times 3 is 24, and that's more than 22. You only have 22. Subtract, and we have 1 left. So that means you could have put 17 into each of these groups. And then there's still going to be 1 left. So the remainder becomes the numerator. And the divisor, the number where we're dividing by, becomes the denominator. So the answer is 17 and 1/3. So we could put 17 in each group and then 1/3 in each group, and that would equal exactly 52. So writing it like a fraction like this is just more accurate than saying 17 remainder 1. Okay, because what we can do is split that remainder of 1 and split that 1 up into 3 groups. And there's 1/3 and 1/3 and 1/3. Okay, so the answer is 17 and 1/3. If you got to there, great job. We would try to simplify this, but since the numerator is 1, we can't make that any simpler. So there are all the answers for today. Number 1 is A, C, and D, because we had to choose 3. Number 2 is 5.22. We had to subtract to find the difference. And number 3, we had to multiply to find the product and then turn it into a mixed number, which is 17 and 1/3. Okay, great job. Nice work, everybody. Hope you did well on those. Please fix them if you made any mistakes and submit your assignment. It should be perfect by the time you submit it because you watch the video and you make your changes. All right, have a great day. See you later.